Who are these people?
Our Magic Boy of the Hour, Justin Pearson, part of the Tennessee Free. Well, actually, can I say this now? Because it was
Maybe.
him, Justin. I forgot the other Justin's name, and then there was a third person who didn't get, uh, pushed out of the Tennessee House of Representatives. So why are they calling them the Tennessee Free? If anything, it should be the Tennessee Two, but whatever, or the Justin Two, whatever you want to call it, but whatever. So anyway, I digress. Pearson got reinstated this week, back in the state house in Tennessee, and oh, there we go. And as reported by BBC, one of the few times we'll probably use BBC as a source, written by Chloe Kim, where she writes, Justin Pearson becomes second expelled Tennessee lawmaker to be reinstated. And she continues. The second of two Tennessee lawmakers expelled from the state legislature after leading a gun control protest on the chamber floor has been reinstated. Justin Pearson, 29, got his seat back after a unanimous vote from 7 members of the Shelby County Board of Commissioners. His colleague Justin Jones, 27, was similarly voted back to the Tennessee House of Representatives on Monday. The 2 Democrats were expelled last week by the Republican-run State House. They were removed days after a school shooting in Nashville that left 6 people dead, including 3 children. After Wednesday's vote, Mr. Pearson addressed the crowd saying, "You can't expel hope, you can't expel justice, you can't expel our voice, and you sure can't expel our fight. We look forward to continuing to fight." The Shelby County Board of Commissioners, mostly made up of Democrats, sent the young legislature back to the State House to represent House District 86, which includes Memphis. Both Pearson and Jones will serve as interim representatives. Special elections will occur in the coming months, and both lawmakers said they plan to run. I'm going to talk more about that in a bit. I think that it's important that the people of District 86 are represented by the person that they voted overwhelmingly to have in office, said Shelby County Commission Chairman Michael Lowry in an interview. Before Wednesday's vote, Mr. Pearson led a march starting at the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. "This is the democracy that is going to lift up the victims of gun violence instead of supporting the NRA and the gun lobbyists," he told supporters. Republican members had accused 3 Democrats, Mr. Pearson, Mr. Jones, and Gloria Johnson, of bringing disorder and dishonor to the chamber when they led protesters at the State House on March 30th. Ms. Johnson narrowly survived an expulsion vote. Republicans said she played a smaller role in the protest and did not use a megaphone. Ms. Johnson, who is white, gave another explanation. "It might have to do with the color of our skin," she said. Mr. Pearson and Mr. Jones were black. A group of Senate Democrats called on the Department of Justice to investigate the expulsion of Mr. Pearson and Mr. Jones to determine whether any violations of the United States Constitution or federal civil rights laws have occurred. The letter was signed by Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock, Pastor Raphael Warnock, among others. Yeah, I had to.
Pasta, you know.
I had to give that a little inflection, given what I've said about him.
I mean, we've got Pastor Warnock involved. We got the seasoning mogul Lowry involved. Like that seasoned salt be making a lot of money for people.
But
Lowry's.
Anyway, there's a little bit more to this article. Nashville Mayor John Cooper appeared at the council meeting on Monday for Mr. Jones, where he told the chamber the expulsion vote was unprecedented. "Let's give the district their voice back. I call this body to give them their voice back now," he said. Mr. Jones and Mr. Pearson between them represent about 140,000 constituents in the state. Some constituents told BBC News they felt disenfranchised by the vote to oust the pair, known as the Justins. President Joe Biden also criticized the move as undemocratic. The use of expulsion in the Tennessee State House had only previously been used twice since the Civil War. What did you say?
Oh, he would know what undemocratic would be.
Well, I argue, is our country democratic?
No.
Oh, no. So you can't know something if we never had it.
Oligarchy.
Something. Any thoughts on this? And I know we kind of talked about this a little bit last night, but any thoughts on this before I continue? Because I do have opinions. And I'm sure a lot of you in the chat will probably kind of guess where I kind of lie on this. But I'm curious to hear what you think of all of this. This has been in the sphere for a while. And I'm actually kind of glad we kind of held off on this and not reported before while everyone else was talking about it. And especially since a lot more stuff has come out since then. But
yeah. Well, I know people are upset about his MLK impression. But I mean, the fact that they want to kick, he used a megaphone, like, really? Like, that's what we're going with? Like, you're it's like, no, there's no good PR teams anymore. It's like you're making them martyrs. If you wanted to actually fight them, sending them out of the courthouse is not how to do that. That actually strengthens their appeal.
Here's the thing with that, because I'm not totally against that, because the idea of politics is there is some acting involved. That's just the reality of it.
You ever heard of the
question is
the mace? I think Congress has a mace, like an actual mace, like a big stick with a ball on the end. Right. It's used for purposes like this, supposedly. Right. If you look it up, right. Where, like, it's only been used like 6 times ever, right? But it's essentially like, you have to come to Congress or we'll hit you with this stick. Like, that's essentially it literally the power of America embodied by a stick. They'll bring it out. They'll occasionally just like wheel it out as like symbolism, right? And that is very similar to this, right? Where it's like, oh, we've only thrown out a couple of people, but we'll throw you out, you know?
Right.
So it's like, well, just go get the mace. Just hit them with the mace. Like, they'll straighten up, you know? It literally, I think it was used to, like, help quell a riot with, like, Andrew Jackson and stuff like that. Like, in the halls of Congress and stuff, there was, like, a big brawl, and they brought out the mace for that. It's like, it seems like a movie, you know? Like, okay. Like, oh, it's Abraham Lincoln with a steel chair. Like, you know, anyway.
But look, but all of that to say is, I don't mind necessarily the theatrics or the props if you mean something behind it.
Yes.
And then, like, if you've been vetted, and this is kind of goes along with what I've said before, I really think a lot of these politicians, if you want to, especially if you want to move up into federal office, kind of need to prove themselves on a local level, and kind of so that people can vet you properly in terms of, what's your record? What have you done? What have you accomplished in your city and town or whatever, that could be elevated, or at least these issues can be elevated on the federal level. More often than not, we hear a lot of these, like, no-name politicians who, for whatever reason or another, just pop up, you know, in the discourse in political media. And this kind of reminds me somewhat of AOC in a sense, because now back around, like, I only started becoming more politically,
bringing the ruckus.
Well, I just say, for me, I only became more politically more motivated around, I'll say, 2017. And I really didn't know about AOC up until when she won. You know, and obviously just following her since. But even to me back then, and I wasn't watching independent media at the time, so it wasn't like I was following her in this space. But to me, she just kind of appeared out of nowhere and immediately became this darling in the Democratic Party. And I see Not necessarily Justin Jones. I think Justin Pearson has gotten a lot more play than him. But all that to say, since he's basically appeared, there has been some issues with him that are beginning to pop up. Case in point, so this is an article from the Federalist. Now, I know Federalist is right wing, and the person who's writing this, Peachy Keenan, just reading through this, she's kind of snarky in terms of her critique on Justin, but there is some stuff here that I do think is kind of apparent with him based on what I've seen of him and what she kind of brings out in terms of this political theater that does exist among both parties that Justin Pearson is kind of playing into now. So she writes, move it. There you go. All right.
Oh, Hilaria Baldwin. Do you know of Hilaria Baldwin?
I do know Hilaria Baldwin.
Do you know why she's putting this? Why she's putting this in here?
And she's going to mention why. But
okay.
Hilaria Baldwin, Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, Justin Trudeau. There's a long list of white Democrats who love putting on theoretical blackface to try appearing less white, more ethnic, and more authentically authentic. Hilaria Baldwin, née Hillary Haywood Thomas, famously became Spanish after a single semester abroad in Spain, despite not actually being Spanish and living her whole life in the United States.
Okay,
Can
pause.
you zoom out?
Yes.
Okay.
So
but go ahead.
This whole thing with Hilaria, she was on like one of those morning talk show news shows, and she's literally lived most of her life in the United States, and she was literally like put on the accent, right? And was like, how you say cucumber? Like it was like that bad. It was it was bad, you know?
Right. No, I remember that because I remember that being in the news for a while. But anyway, Justin Trudeau is a subject matter expert in all forms of blackface, as he demonstrates whenever he dons Indian, feather, and dot muffy. Sandy Cortez, theater kid from Westchester, was rebranded as a fiery Latina to win her seat in office. Also, you know, she was from the Bronx. She was born in the Bronx, but raised in Westchester County. So I think people forget that about her, but we continue. Who is the audience of these clickbait performances? Well, the usual suspects, of course, middle-aged, liberal, white women. These lowly ladies gobble up fake ethnicities, feel-good cultural stereotypes, and white guilt like they're gobbling chocolate-covered antidepressants.
That's a great product. Someone make that right now. Like Percocet bonbons needs to happen. You know?
50 Shades of Patriarchal Oppression is their titillation of choice. These vapid virtual signalers have just discovered their new cultural warrior of the week, a man who makes their rusty innards churn, a man who sends a tingle up their leg to body parts they haven't felt like
since they first
saw Barack Obama at the 2004 DNC convention. As I said, she's very snarky, but I just love her. I just love her humor here. The object of the adulation is a 27-year-old Tennessee politician named Justin Pearson. Pearson is enjoying worldwide fame at the moment as the most visible member of the Tennessee Free local state representatives who incited an insurrection inside the state house in favor of gun control after the school shooting on April 3rd.
Yep.
When I first saw Justin Pearson in his 1970s strip, I thought it was a joke. Were the 70s really this back? Did I need to buy myself some cork platform sandals and start popping lewds?
Oh.
Pearson is a state rep by day and a preacher by night. Here's one of the recent sermons. We're not going to play it now. At a Memphis Unitarian Universalist church that began with a prayer to Mother God and an invitation for dead ancestors to speak for him. To anyone who hates this essay, please note that it was written by my dead ancestors speaking through me. Blame them, okay? Pearson also sports a comically huge Spaceball-style afro that towers over his narrow frame. It acts as an angelic halo for his unassailable divinity. He delivers speeches in the mellifluous cadence familiar to anyone who has attended a black church in the Deep South,
or a white church in the Deep South. Let's be clear there too, because we stole that shit everywhere. Like,
right.
It's good. It's a good bit. Like, we're using it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So
employing a sing-song voice and a pulpit pounding performance. Yeah. As some of his superfans noted in my tweet about him, this is how black preachers talk. Okay. What's the big deal, racist? Preacher's gonna preach. That's fine. The Mother God is working through him and filling him with the holy woke spirit. But it does seem a little odd for him to do the same poultry-worthy performance in the context of his job as in the viral speech he gave in the State House last week. So we'll continue, and then I do have a clip that kind of shows this.
Okay.
If you remember Arsenio Hall doing his preacher character in Coming to America, or saw the Robert Townsend cult 80s comedy Hollywood Shuffle, you might be forgiven for thinking Pearson's persona is all a bit much. The hair, the disco ties, the suits, the cadence, is he for real? Or is he doing what I can only call a modern-day minstrel show for clout? My friend Inez Stedman recently sent me the video of Justin Pearson from 2016 taken when he was a student at Bowdoin College. Bowdoin, those of you who may know, is a liberal arts college in Maine. So, Maine. Yeah. So here's what he sounded like back then. So
let me do this, and there we go. And I'll throw this on.
I'm running for president of BSG. There are a few reasons that we're running this campaign this year. One has to do with representation. How can we represent all voices in a conversation? I wanted to do this by partnering with organizations from the Bowdoin Democrats to the Bowdoin Republicans. I want to bring together different voices, dissenting voices, voices that may be more liberal or more conservative, in order that we can reach a point of sort of the radical middle.
Seemed like the NRA and gun lobbyists might win. But
yeah, I mean, that's a
good news for us.
Big difference.
I don't know how long this Saturday in the state of Tennessee might last. But oh, we have good news, folks. We've got good news that Sunday always comes.
Proselytize, brother. Proselytize.
So you definitely hear the difference between 2016 and now.
Clearly. I mean, you could argue the code switching is the first video.
Right.
That he's much more used to performance in his second voice.
Right. But as a black person, in regards to that, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know, given the environment in a predominantly white school, you somewhat seemingly, and I think especially for me, I felt this too, the idea that you have to, quote unquote, act white in order for you to be someone accepted. So I don't necessarily, I hate it, but I understand it in terms of
the classic, like, mild-mannered, what do they call Obama? Like, articulate and... Like,
I mean, even Joe Biden made that comment, like, he speaks so well. He's very articulate bullshit, as if, like...
Right, as if black people can't speak well.
Cannot be articulate or shouldn't be articulate. So I get that from this context, you know, especially what I've gone through personally. But this shift from going from that to this, what we're seeing right now from him, is definitely a little jarring. And as I said, and as you know, that what was already said, this, I wouldn't argue this may not even so much appeal to white women, but more like, maybe it does.
Like wine moms.
Yeah, maybe it does, but I feel this mostly appeals to black boomers. Older black boomers who are in church, who understand that cadence, who more likely are going to church. So it kind of gives that nostalgia, as you said, of MLK.
Well, it's like here in the South too, right? Mastermind being like, I was in the South for 3 months and picked up an accent. Yes, you pick up a slight accent. Like, people can tell I've lived in the South, but that doesn't mean I put on the fucking, like, there's a voice.
Master.
Well, it's not even that. It's like there's a Southern accent that, like, you know, well, if I start talking like this and shit, and, you know, you guys like I can start making it more and more Southern. And, like, the people who actually talk like that, I don't believe them. Like, that's not your real voice. You're doing that to do that. You are making yourself seem country specifically to be more country. Like,
it just, the idea of using that voice to me in general, especially in the Black church, in a sense, kind of comes off as very authentic, disingenuous to me.
It's
because it's almost like the idea
cliche.
of, like, you're tuning up.
Yeah.
You're tuning up for the hoop. You're tuning up in terms of, like, telling people this is the house that God is going to bless you with, or this is the car that God is going to bless you with.
Classic, like, fire and brimstone. Well, we're going to take it to the mountaintop. And, well, you know, it's very, like, I get it. And I get you probably do that as a pastor frequently. I would think that pastor was being cliche. Having said that, like, you know, I've seen pastors do it well, you know, so, like, I would argue, Brother Cornell has a bit of this, but he speaks like that normally all the time.
So,
like, it's what he grew up with, like, and around. Always reverent.
But yeah, so as Peachy is mentioning in this article, it's the idea of, like, it'd be one thing if he was doing that all the time, but it does come off as disingenuous, especially seeing that clip. He wasn't talking like that back then. And in certain situations, he's still not talking like that, and we're going to get to that. But anyway, as podcaster Amy Therese notes, Justin Pearson was a normal, middle-class, clean-cut Black college student in 2016 when he ran for SPG president. He spoke about bringing together liberals and conservatives to meet in the radical middle and waxed lyrical about the importance of hearing every voice.
Yeah.
Red flag for me right there. If you
sounds great.
Right there. Well, it sounds good to the normies.
Yes.
But I think, you know, but to meet in the radical middle, what does that mean? I would argue that there is no meaning of radical middle. So I think even there it's just kind of like,
I didn't even catch that. Radical, the biggest oxymoron ever uttered. Radical middle. You literally can't have a middle that's like, that's why it's called the middle. You know?
You should be, if you're looking at the Overton window, like, as far left as, at least in terms of, like, on that side.
Well, it reminds me of Hillary Clinton with hot sauce in her bag. You know, it's pandering.
It is.
Yeah.
But anyway, in his 2016 video, as we saw, Pearson speaks to the camera and makes a good case for becoming the next Bowdoin student body president. He is a strikingly handsome, clean-cut, afro-less, and sports a nice suit. He's like a Black's Alex P. Keaton.
Yep.
But it's his voice that is startling. Shockingly, he shows no trace of a strong Southern accent. Instead, he uses an Obama-esque white accent that could step smartly into any network newsroom. This kid is going places, you might think. I agree. But when you see and hear Justin Pearson today, you think, who groomed him? Who decided to brownwash him to be a lot less Bowdoin and a lot more boondocks, as Inez Stepman puts it? Answer, Princeton. After Bowdoin, he won a spot at his elite public policy and international affairs junior summer institute at the Woodrow Wilson School, a grooming program for future political leaders. These scouts are looking for the next Obama, the way of basketball scouts seek the next Michael Jordan. So far, all we got is a Canadian Obama, Trudeau, gay Obama, Buttigieg, an American psycho Obama, Newsom, whose Obama impression remains undefeated. Some may insist Pearson is just code switching. You ignorant white person. Okay, you can call it what you want, but it's still putting on a performance. Code switching involves adjusting one's style of speech, appearance, behavior, and expression in ways that will optimize the comfort of others in exchange for fair treatment, quality service, and employment opportunities. Research suggests that code switching often occurs in spaces where negative stereotypes of Black people run counter to what are considered appropriate behaviors and norms for a specific environment.
It also speaks to a private and public position. If you have a private and public appearance.
Exactly.
So,
was his white Bowden persona a survival mechanism? I would guess probably.
Probably. Yeah.
Or was that the real Justin, the nice suburban middle-class son of a prosperous minister?
Bingo, bingo.
Maybe Justin Pearson is something new, Black to Black trans. He was groomed and radically affirmed in a transition from normie Obama-esque centrist into a more politically desired racial stereotype for the current era. Militant activist race revolutionary. He got his Colin Kaepernick glow up, as Amy Therese put it. This all is taking place in the wake of an awful event everyone has since forgotten, the massacre at a nearby Nashville Christian school. In honor of the three murdered students and 3 adults killed by one of their own, a left-wing woman pretended to be a man. The radicals are now marching for freedom and justice right over the newly dug graves of 9-year-olds. It's a galling display of the raw political power tactics the supervillains on the left excel at. I would argue the center. That's not us on the left.
Yeah, it's yeah.
After all, why waste time mourning dead kids killed by one of your own when you can flip a white-on-white issue shooting around the, checks notes, Black civil rights issue? Maybe Pearson was radicalized by losing his campaign for Bowdoin student council president. In response, he turned full Joker, or in his case, full punchline. So again, snarky, but I think
the whole one of your own is kind of a weird way to phrase that.
Right. But I feel like I definitely feel that in the space, even for us, there's definitely more of a shift now in terms of, moving to the more clean-cut Obama-esque into the more radicalized, like Hotep person, I think, especially as far as politics, especially among Black people. But, so it's almost kind of taking that extreme to the other way sometimes, depending on the situation. But I think it's the idea of like, it's almost not cool to be like considered white and boring. Like you have to be
look
like,
at what they did with AOC too, because she was
right,
kind of middle class and boring, and they turned into like a Latina bartender
from the Bronx,
right? So
it's
but occasionally they'll pull that stuff out, like when she gets heckled or whatever, she'll suddenly put that accent on,
right?
So
I do want to play this because, as I said, I don't necessarily mind the theatrics. If this is for something. Now, again, Justin Pearson did this. He called for gun control, which fine. For an all-white school, I presume. So for whatever, fine. But as a Black person, it's okay, I think, to ask, all right, so especially if you're a politician, what are you going to do for Black people? So Teslyn Figaro was on the Breakfast Club. She asked him, what's your Black policy for? And notice a couple of things. Notice what he says and how he says it to her. So go ahead, once this stops buffering,
Tell me about your Black policy. You know, not about everybody and help everybody. You represent 60% Black. Tell me how your gun reform or whatever policy you're working on. Do you support reparations? Some people said you didn't, and then others said you did. Like, give us a quick rundown specifically on Black people that you represent in your district.
Yeah, I am 100% pro-Black, and here's the reality that we got to talk about. When you do for Black folk, everybody does benefit.
Yeah, we know, but right? I'm gonna ask you about the Black policy.
So I am. I got you.
Want to know about your policy?
My policies. Exactly.
What's
when you think about reparations, I'm 100% for reparations. I have been for a very long time. For cash, for credit, for check, for credit card, for trust fund, and I was on Bev Johnson, another member.
Go ahead, Reef. I know you.
The iHeartRadio community in January, and I explained the reason why I'm for reparations.
Oh, can't hear you, Reef.
I was just saying, like, that's all just money. He just listed money.
Right. But notice the voice.
Yes.
He didn't use that preacher cadence with Tetzlin or anyone else on the Breakfast Club.
It's much more, but it's also not quite his voice for his college, like, videos.
No.
Right? It's like somewhere in between both of them.
Right. So I can, again, like
he's trying to be cool Obama guy. Like,
right. Yeah. You know, but go ahead. Continue.
Isn't just because of the enslavement of Black people, because there are some people who say, well, you weren't enslaved, and then we have to walk through housing segregation, we got to walk through lynching, we got to walk through mass incarceration, which we're experiencing now. What about reparations for all of these harms that we have experienced all the way up into the present day?
Are you willing to put it on your website though, because it's not under your website on issues?
Yeah.
Are you willing to do that? Okay.
I'm willing to do that. It is not the issue that people in District 86 are saying is number one for them. Because to the point that was made earlier, they're definitely concerned about safety. They're concerned about crime. A lot of my population is also elderly. And so you'll see on the website, aging justice. There's not enough money in Social Security to actually help elders live out.
This is called obfuscating, by the way.
Right. Yeah. The idea of him saying, oh, my constituents don't care about reparations. Excuse me?
Yeah, excuse me? Where? We know someone specifically near there, right? Do we not? That asked recently, a Miss Marianne Williamson.
We'll get there, and we're gonna get. Oh no, we're gonna get there. But yeah, like we'll get there. Yeah, let's finish this though, because that was kind of like, okay, you are not serious at all, but we'll listen to you at least for this clip. And
the rest of their lives in a meaningful way.
You
so policies that we're putting forward have to do with people being able to grow old well, which not include financial increases in money, but creating opportunities for them to gather and to have community. I live in the most polluted, one of the most polluted districts in the state. And so, God rest their souls, both my grandmothers have died of cancer. My grandmother Pearson, grandmother Gwen.
Remember, he was started
due to environmental.
They asked him about reparations.
Disproportionately hurts Black people and poor people. So both my grandmothers lived in a community, this community I live in now, where there are 17 toxic release inventory facilities that are polluting our air, water, and our soil. And so the Black policy that I have, as you articulated it so well, is finding where there are the injustices in environment and education, dealing with gun violence and everything that we can do, putting the resources toward them, because it's indeed the majority of my district that's being impacted, but the effects of it continue to be on everybody. And what is important to note here is that for us to seek and to be a part of liberation, and this is really important, the people who do have the resources also have a responsibility. And so when I talk about white people's engagement and involvement, it is not to say I'm just concerned about what they think or what they feel. It's because I believe white people and people of privilege and power have a responsibility of choosing a social location with the people who are being marginalized, because they have our money and our resources, and they have a lot of what they have because of what we do not.
But except,
so that means you know the problem.
Yes.
You know the problem, but your priorities were first climate change and elderly care over what this lady just asked you. Essentially, you just said, I'd rather do these other things,
right,
than like reparations, even though that's what you asked about.
But not even that. Is the idea of, okay, you took up gun control, which, given your district, was, I would argue, at least in this situation, with the
against
school,
your
was
constituency. Like,
well, no, but it was basically a white suburb problem.
yes,
Essentially, so you took up their charge and you're getting love from them. Fine, whatever. But as Teslin was asking you, what are you going to do for Black people? And you kind of skated that. And to prove that, and I'm going to be very transparent, I went on his website.
Okay.
And Reef knows this. I pulled this up last night. Okay. So, because I was just kind of curious. So I pulled up a couple of things. You can go to his website if you want after this, but although you're not going to find much, honestly. So he talks about, one thing that I did pull up for you guys is healthcare for all, Medicaid expansion, and healthcare. Healthcare is a human right. Tennessee has refused to expand Medicaid, which has left many people vulnerable and one accident away from being further entrenched into poverty. And leaders must be dedicated to protecting the health of children and the elderly, most especially in its important that we protect reproductive rights. Right now, the Tennessee legislature has some of the most restrictive laws on reproductive health. This must be changed to allow women, especially those who are victims of sexual violence, to be protected. Okay, couple of things. First off, why not Medicare for all? Or even better, why not nationalized healthcare?
Single payer. Well, as a state rep.
I mean, this is Tennessee, so state rep. So Medicare for all for your state, number one. But number two, he kind of goes into, as you see at the bottom, he goes into reproductive rights.
Yep. So
kind of taking on the cultural talking point that you can argue the white media is pushing, versus the actual crux, in terms of the reason like healthcare for us is, for Black people, is especially important, which, as Tesla was trying to get him to say, does tie to reparations, and I'll make this argument, I think we talk about, and I think it's very easy to talk about reparations in terms of money. When I say reparations, I do not always mean money. I'm talking about economic empowerment, what Black people need to do to be able to fend for themselves. And if you don't have to worry about healthcare, then that's one shackle that is off, Black people in particular, especially since we have, the highest risk in terms of living, in terms of disease, in terms of birth, very high for us in our community. So the fact that he kind of dismissed how that's not
he didn't even
tied
talk
to...
about that. He didn't even talk about that in his reparations thing.
No.
Or any other economic. He gave no economic support other than credit check, whatever, which he also didn't name a number there. He didn't mention how much is supposedly reparations. It's what? It's in the trillions, is it not?
Trillions.
Yeah,
trillions.
It's 7 trillion, I think, something like that.
About 10 right
now. He didn't mention the exact number, even though me and you, who are nobodies generally, know that amount. He's supposed to be super smart. So
I do want to pull up this one.
You're right.
Oh. So actually move up. And then this is another one I just pulled just for today. Criminal justice and public safety. So I was looking to see anything in relation to defunding the police or anything like that. You could probably guess what he's going to say. Anyway, in Nashville, I vow to advocate for safer streets, a fairer criminal legal system, and social supports such as education and employment opportunities to help prevent and reduce crime in our city. Memphians should not have to choose between public safety and equitable treatment from the criminal legal system. While crime has plagued our city, Shelby County investment in policing, 38% of our 2023 budget, is among the highest rates for cities of our size. Black Tennesseans make up 17% of our state's population, yet 44% of Tennessee's prison population. I pledge to advocate for a different approach. Instead of investing in punitive measures to incarcerate people, as state representative, I will call for investments in proven methods, such as alternatives for incarceration for low-level offenses and diversion programs, to curb recidivism and reduce the number of Memphians incarcerated. Black and brown people are incarcerated and policed at a disproportionate rate, and these injustices have a long-lasting impact. For example, 1 in 5 system-impacted Black people in Tennessee have lost the right to vote. In Nashville, I will advocate for policies that will ensure that victims are heard during the criminal justice process. I will also advocate for diversion and restorative justice programming. Go down. That will give people who commit offenses a chance to take responsibility and be held accountable for their actions. There isn't one way to prevent crime and reduce incarceration in Memphis, but we must invest in a variety of comprehensive strategies, and again, we don't know what those are, to ensure that we are seeing the root of the problem.
I mean, this sounds like a lot of reform, which we know what reform means.
Well, but he doesn't give any specifics, though. He doesn't give, like, let's try this, let's do this. It's more like, we should try something. I pledge to do something, but he doesn't go into any, like, policy or anything. So this is just very vague, and I believe on purpose.
Yeah,
because
zero specifics.
Right. He doesn't want to alienate, because I think now he's kind of caught fire in a sense. He doesn't want to alienate now his white suburb bomb latte drinking base that he's growing. You know, he doesn't want to put them off of, he doesn't want to put them off in terms of advocating for him, you know, like now, especially that he stood up for their values. But he doesn't want to necessarily put off Black people who are kind of caught whiff to him to actually say some things that seem kind of like he might be for defund the police, but he's not saying it explicitly in terms of, you know, like really fighting for our causes. Now, as you said, and you beat me to the punch, we have met someone a couple of weeks ago, and we have issues with him too. But has been very unapologetic in terms of reparations. And I went to his website, and he has a reparations plan on his website, you know, so you can look that up if you want. But we just want to remind you what he said a couple weeks ago to potential Democratic candidate Marianne Williamson, having to kind of school her in terms of what he's looking for regarding reparations for Black people. And as you said, he's just down the street from where Justin is. And he's calling up for reparations for his district. So why can't Justin?
Maybe reach out even. You know?
Go ahead.
Engage.
Hi, yes, so I concur with a lot of things that you said. One, I ran for office, and I'm running yet again against the king maker, James Clyburn. But my attitude, if you're the king maker, then your district should be living like royalty, and they're not. So I know exactly how they try to shame you, exclude you, and slander your name. And my thing is this: we as Americans need to grow a backbone, okay? When did we start worrying? Well, see, I'm a Black American Gullah Geechee. We've always had to stand up and fight for everything. And I know you was talking about how things used to be. Well, I was born, my great-great-grandparents were still alive. My great-grandparents were all still alive except one. And they told me the good old days for y'all weren't good old days for them. So they're used to having to fight and be slandered and be excluded and be denigrated. I want to thank you for being, and I'm going to say this because they like to say man enough. I'm going to thank you, a woman, for being man enough to do not what's popular, not what's easy, but what's right. And you're running on a reparations platform. And that's the right thing to do. Now, I do want to give you some pointers if you're open to it about your reparations plan, because I face all kinds of backlash, which I gladly accept. I'm here for it. My ancestors who were fighting in these rice marshes and swamps didn't back down to any backlash. I will be an insult to my great-grandmother who died at 101 if I back down because of people saying mean things to me. One, reparations comes from the federal government. It does not come from your tax dollars. America pays reparations every single day. They're paying it to Ukrainians right now. They're paying it when they take care of people in the country illegally and going to the troves. They paid it to the Japanese Americans who were interned. Even though my great-grandfather helped to save the Jews from the Nazis, he came back to America and he was locked out of the GI Bill, which gave trillions of dollars to mainly white veterans that they say built the middle class. And yet those same Jews right now are getting reparations. People in Guam.
Wait, I have to stop you.
Oh, that's what she gets pissed off at, right?
But anyway, so to summarize all of this, Justin Pearson is another Democratic shill that's looking to rise in the ranks, and he found an issue that now he's getting his 15 minutes of fame. And as I told Reef earlier, don't be surprised if he tries to run for Congress on the federal level or even Senate on the federal level for far too long. But this is just another guy who got lucky, I would argue, over an issue that affected, white people in his state and kind of within the culture means of what people are talking about right now, especially within the Democratic Party, but has no basis on trying to help Black people, has no basis of trying to support us in terms of anything that is specific to Black people, and ain't much any different than a lot of these other Black politicians that we see that the media is kind of throwing in our face in the name of, oh, here's someone who's Black. In this case, here's someone who's Black that talks with a certain cadence with a huge ass fro that's actually standing for all Black people. So.
But is he though?
Yeah. No.
But is he though?
I would always argue if a politician just pops up, like just out of the blue, then that's a red flag to me that run away.
Yep.
Because anyone who's seasoned, anyone who's really for the issues, like Kashama Sawan gets no play at all. But she's been active, or at least up until now, she's been actively working in Seattle to try and bring some actual change, to the working class in Seattle. You don't hear her on mainstream media at all. But you hear about this. But you hear this guy all of a sudden within the last 2 weeks as
everywhere,
shining
plastered.
star.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. So don't take this guy seriously. He's just another shell.
Well,
moving on.